She met him on the night the desert winds howled like tortured spirits, an outlaw with no name, no mercy, and no past he was willing to share. The townsfolk said he was cursed, born from the devil's sandstorms and raised by gunfire, a man whose shadow alone could silence a saloon. But to her, in that single moment under the flickering lantern light of the abandoned trading post, he looked less like a monster and more like a wounded wolf hiding in the darkness. She didn't know his crimes. She didn't ask. All she saw was a man bleeding from the shoulder, gripping a revolver with desperate strength as thunder rolled above them like the judgment of heaven. She sighed, her voice soft but steady as she stepped closer. "Put the gun down, or you'll bleed out before sunrise." That was the beginning one daring woman facing a man the whole West feared, unaware that their fates had already tangled like tumbleweeds in a storm. He didn't trust her. He didn't trust anyone. Years of betrayal had carved deep lines into his soul, and danger was the only companion he'd ever counted on. But the way she wrapped his wound, the way her fingers didn't shake, despite the sound of approaching riders, rattled something inside him. She told him her name was Clara. A rancher's daughter, brave, stubborn, and far too curious for a land where curiosity got people buried. The outlaw said nothing, but his eyes followed her every move, eyes dark like burnt embers, refusing to die. Outside, hooves thundered across the desert floor. Bounty hunters, led by Sheriff Rourke, a man whose badge shined bright but whose heart carried shadows even darker than the outlaw's. He wanted the outlaw dead, not captured, and Clara knew it. As the wind smacked the broken shutters and dust spiraled across the wooden floor, she whispered urgently, "If they find you here, they'll kill us both." He smirked, with a bitterness only the hunted understand. "Then you should have left me where I fell." But she shook her head. No man deserves to die alone. They escaped into the storm just before the bounty hunters reached the outpost, moving through the desert like two fugitives bound by a fate neither chose. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating jagged canyons, shriveled cacti, and the breathless vastness of the Wild West. They found shelter in an abandoned miner's shack, its roof half collapsed, the smell of old dust and rust thick in the air. As she started a small fire, sparks danced like fireflies in the dark, casting flickering shadows over the outlaw's face. He finally spoke, his voice low and rough. "Why help me?" She lifted her gaze, her eyes reflecting the fire's glow. "Because I saw pit, not evil." No words had ever struck him harder. For the first time, he lowered the walls around his heart. He told her just one truth. He had been framed for a murder committed by the very sheriff hunting him. Sheriff Rourke wanted him dead because he was the last living witness to the crime. Clara's breath caught. She realized she wasn't just helping a wounded stranger. She was standing between justice and a corrupt badge. Their journey turned dangerous as the sheriff's men closed in. Footsteps crunched on dry sand outside the shack at dawn. Horses snorted. Saddles creaked, and the chilling voice of Sheriff Rourke echoed through the canyon. "Come out." But a bullet's quicker than starvation. The sheriff kicked the door open, rain dripping from his coat, his eyes sharp as knives. The shack erupted into chaos gunfire, splintering wood. Clara's terrified gasp as the outlaw shielded her from a flying bullet. He fired back with deadly precision, forcing the sheriff's men to retreat to cover. The storm screamed outside, thunder shaking the earth, as if nature itself had a stake in their survival. The climax came when Sheriff Rourke seized Clara by the arm, pressing his gun to her temple. The outlaw froze, his breath catching like a man falling into an abyss. "Drop it," the sheriff snarled, "or she dies before the next lightning strike." The outlaw's fingers trembled, something they had never done before. Claire whispered, "Don't you dare surrender." But the outlaw stepped forward, lowering his gun, choosing a life over his own. The sheriff smirked victoriously, until Clara struck him with a burning piece of wood from the campfire. The outlaw lunged, tackling the sheriff to the ground. A brutal struggle followed fists, dirt for until. One final gunshot echoed through the storm. Sheriff Rourke collapsed. Silence fell, broken only by Clara's shaky breath. But the ending was not peaceful. The outlaw knew he couldn't stay. His name was cleared, but the scars of a hunted man ran deep. As the sun rose over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and blood red, he turned to Clara. "You tamed me," he murmured. "But a man like me doesn't deserve a home." She stepped closer, touching his face with trembling hands. "Then let me teach you what you do deserve." He didn't answer, but he didn't walk away either. And in the Wild West, silence was sometimes a promise. If you want part 2 of their forbidden love story, let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more Wild West tales.